The 2023 NFL Draft is in the books. The punter pick in the 6th round was made. And finally, we got some skill guys to talk about, a lot of them. In fact, we'll wrap up day 3 of the Bengals draft class on today's episode.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien. We're going to wrap up the Bengals 2023 NFL Draft today on this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. You can subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcast. Become an everydayer as we get into the offseason. Plenty of great stuff to talk about with new rookies arriving in Cincinnati. Can become a first listener. Make us your first listen of the day. Today's episode of Locked On Bengals brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. And if you would like to run your own draft room, this is the game for you. You can download it at ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the app stores. That's Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. James, let's dive into day 3 of the Cincinnati Bengals 2023 draft class. One very clear theme through the first 3 picks of the day, at least, all of them offensive skill players, all of them players whose primary job is to move the ball closer to and into the end zone. Charlie Jones, Chase Brown, and Andrei Iosvias. Do I have that right?
Yeah, look at you. It's pretty good. That caught me off guard. Name guy who gets names wrong, Iosivas.
Athletes is the trend. Yeah. Athletes throughout this draft, Jordan Battle being the exception in terms of his tested athleticism in the 3rd round. But coming into the top part of day 3, athlete in Charlie Jones, athlete in Chase Brown, athlete in Andrei Iosvias.
Yeah, and what had happened was the Bengals let me get a hold of their draft board, and I put the skill guys at the top. And I said, Mike, I am sick of defense. You guys and Duke. And so I got to rearrange it kind of like the Grinch did on Christmas. And so that's how they ended up with 3 skill guys. No, in all seriousness, I think that this kind of played out the way they had wanted. And specifically on day 3, I think they knew that was potentially the sweet spot for some of these offensive players. Was there a path to an offensive player in round 1? Of course, there were guys on their board. Dalton Kincaid, certainly Jahmyr Gibbs, guys like that. But this was the most likely scenario where you get to round 4 and you get the guy that you like. And Charlie Jones, I don't know about you, Jake. Let's just focus on him for a second. I look at his game. You got the 4.43 speed, 110 catches, played in that pro-style offense at Purdue. His return ability is a punt returner and a kick returner. He's not just fast, but he's quick. I think he can play inside, certainly can play outside. That's what he did at Purdue. I think he can contribute right away on special teams, of course, as a returner, gives him some juice there. I think at punt returner, Trent Taylor's on notice officially. And in kickoff returner, does it matter as much? No, I think there are other guys that can do it if you don't want to use him there. But punt returner's certainly interesting for him. And then that wide receiver room, we've brought up Kansas City and losing Tyler Boyd. And what it was like watching Trenton Irwin and Hayden Hurst and guys like that can't get open one-on-one. This guy can get open one-on-one. He's comfortable doing it. He's good at the back shoulder. The back shoulder catch against DJ Turner got some love and hate on Twitter. It's a heck of a play. And so, yeah, he's a really, really good football player. So I like what he adds year 1, and I like what he can add year long-term in that room. The 2 knocks on him, size. He's 175, so we're going to get him on that Built Bar plan, Jake. And then the other part of it, the lifting plan too. We'll start benching and stuff, Charlie. We got you. And the other part is just his age, 24 and a half years old. But outside of that, there's a lot to like about him.
Chuck Sizzle, the nickname for Charlie Jones.
Is that real, or did you just make that up?
I believe that's real. That's a real thing.
Chuck
I didn't make
Sizzles?
that up.
All
We,
right,
we,
well,
we have some notes in the draft sheet on some of the wide receivers, and the note on Charlie Jones, his nickname is Chuck Sizzle.
Oh, well, we might have to work on that one, unless he really likes it. But
what's not to like, James? That's a huge point in his favor. Look, if you look at Charlie Jones as a draft prospect and you ignore the age thing, this is a pick that you could see coming from miles away. When you brought this up last night, and credit to you, you were on this last night after day 2 of the draft. So I hope everybody saw that episode. You would have known this was coming or a possibility if you had heard James bring this guy up. You throw out the age thing, he fits the Bengals in most ways. But the Bengals break their trend at receiver, and they do it on day 3, to be fair, in a down receiver class, to be fair, of really targeting guys with early production. They like guys that are going out there at 19 years old like Jamar Chase and running through the SEC. Charlie Jones was a redshirt his first year. He had to walk on at Purdue. He had a year lost to transferring when he lost transfer eligibility for that transfer. He started at Buffalo, I believe, and eventually earned a scholarship. Took him a while, took him until last year, and he was finally a full-time starter. And at like 24 years old, which is very old for the college game, in defense's defense that had to try to play against Charlie Jones, he was dominant.
Mm-hmm.
He was really good, and he was winning down the field. He was winning in the middle of the field. There are a few different highlights you can tweet about Charlie Jones. Unafraid at his size. You talk about size as a knock. He's willing to go over the middle, fight for the ball in the air, and was incredibly productive in that Purdue offense. And the Bengals love productivity and athleticism at wide receiver, even though Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins are exceptions. They were both very, very young. Where these guys aren't as young, and we're focused on Charlie Jones right now, that the production is there. It's just later, right? And the athleticism is there for him. And that back shoulder highlight that I tweeted, James, I mean, that looks so in place for a fit with the Bengals and Joe Burrow. Yeah. And he has the slot experience too. People are projecting him as a slot. He might have to move inside in the NFL. He might not. Has experience playing inside and outside of wide receiver in the college ranks. And like you said, I think the return experience is a big one in his favor as well.
Yeah. He's explosive. He's quick. He's all of the things you're looking for. He's got, and I think he's going to be able to do a little bit of both. And now, if you have T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, where do you play mostly? You're going to be in the slot, Charlie. I think he's ready to do it. But, man, I just look, 110 catches, 1,361 yards, 12.5 yards per catch, 12 touchdowns last year. They tried to get him the ball. He was able to take it, run with it, and make big plays. So I love his game. You know, you said what, Chuck Sizzle? Maybe we call him Charlie Edelman or Charlie Welker. I made that joke on Twitter. Some liked it, some didn't. But he's a lot of fun. And I think guys like this that are really great route runners, that know the entire route tree, that have been featured in college offenses, they come in and a guy like Joe Burrow just says, "Ooh, that guy works." Like, I don't think it's going to take long. I think it's going to take Burrow like one throwing session, and he's going to be like, "I'm a fan of Charlie Jones." And he's going to go, "Okay, here we go." And suddenly you have another piece, which is a lot of fun because of the back shoulders, because of the different timing patterns, and the fact that the Bengals offense got more athletic. I wanted them to get more athletic, and they did with this pick, and they did with a guy who, unlike Iosivas, is not a project. I think he's as close to a plug-and-play fourth rounder, especially in this draft, as you're going to get at the receiver position.
I think the career drop rate reflects that as well in terms of a guy that's going to be reliable. 111 catches, 3.9% career drop rate. One of the best in this class. That's one of the things that I pointed out about Parker Washington as well, but his was even a little bit higher, 5.2% career drop rate for Parker Washington, who went a little bit later in the draft. One of, if not the best, there's one better. A guy named Kieris Jackson was a little bit better in terms of career drop rate out of all the guys in the sheet, but a really strong data point there for Charlie Jones. And the other thing you mentioned, James, that I just wanted to touch on before we move on to the rest of the guys the Bengals picked on Saturday is I think the versatility is going to play up for him. I think his ability to play outside means that when he goes onto the field, Jamar Chase can line up anywhere. T. Higgins can line up anywhere. And while Tyler Boyd can certainly play outside, Charlie Jones, very, very experienced playing outside, has the athleticism to play outside if he needs to. And so I think it does give them, when they have to rotate at receiver, a little bit more versatility. They're not telling you who's going where. They're not pigeonholing anybody into playing certain positions if Charlie Jones gets on the field. And very well could be wide receiver 4 right away. Coming up next, the Bengals also add a running back we need to talk about. The running back pick finally came. The tight end pick did not. We'll talk about that, as well as a wide receiver in the double dip at wide receiver. Not necessarily a position we were sure they were going to double dip at, James. So we'll talk about that coming up next. Today's episode of Locked On Bengals brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. The draft is over. Maybe you've got draft fever and you just want to keep drafting. Well, Ultimate Football GM is the game for you if you think you'd make a good NFL GM. And a big part of that, of course, is building your team through the NFL draft. And whether you want to go against the grain or make chalk picks and do what's expected of you, you can make those choices in Ultimate Football GM. In addition to setting the scheme, preferences for your team, navigating free agency, fire your coach if it's not working. All the power is yours. You don't like your coach running the ball on 2nd and 10? Well, you have the power to change that and get a coach more like Zach Taylor, who is among the league leaders in not running the ball on 2nd and 10. You can check it out at ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. And Locked On Bengals listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise using promo code LOCKEDON in all caps. That's ultimate-gm.com. Start your dynasty today.
Today's show also brought to you by Schultz & Sons. Yes, Schultz & Sons, AGS certified local Bengals fans that know their jewelry. Only 5% of jewelry stores, by the way, are AGS certified. And, well, Schultz & Sons, they are not only that, but they are your one-stop shop for all things jewelry, whether it's custom pieces, whether you're looking for that right piece for her and you don't know what you're looking for and you need some guidance. Well, they can help you and give you that guidance. And look, I've met Matt. He's a huge Bengals fan. I've hung out with Matt. He is a really personable guy that's going to be able to give you the guidance you need to find that special piece, right? To find that special draft jewelry pick per se. And so whether it's creating your own piece of jewelry in a custom piece or getting the right design that they have in store for you, which you can check out their store at 2202 Dixie Highway in Fort Mitchell, 5 minutes from the bridge into Kentucky. Make sure you stop by, tell them that Locked On Bengals sent you. They're a Cincinnati tradition. They've been celebrating quality jewelry and providing people with quality jewelry in the Cincinnati area for over 50 years. So check them out online at schulzdiamonds.com, schultzdiamonds.com. Remember, when it has to be perfect, it has to be Schultz & Sons.
Chase Brown, the running back selection for the Cincinnati Bengals at the end of the 5th round. This is about where he was projected to go, but if you look at different consensus boards, Bengals did well with their first 6 picks or so of identifying value. We'll talk about how the picks lined up with consensus maybe a little bit more tomorrow when we take a broader look at the draft and kind of look back on the class on its whole. But let's focus in on Chase Brown. What theme is continued here? Well, I said it at the top of the show, and it continues here: athleticism. 98th percentile RAS, which is a relative athletic score. Kentley Pratt puts together.
And there you go. He screwed up. He got Iosivas right, but Platt, nope, can't do it.
That was a memory issue.
Woo.
Either way, by far the highest graded available running back on the Joe Goodberry, Jake Liscow, Michael Santagata, etc. Draft guide Jared Neal, all the guys that put work into the draft sheet, shouting out all of them here at the end of the draft because a lot of people work on this. Was by far the highest grade available at the position. And a lot of that is because he was very, very productive, very, very athletic.
Yeah.
And what did we talk about the Bengals wanting to get at this position is is juice. I mean, that's what drew you to Israel Abanikanda, right? The breakaway speed, the long speed. And Abanikanda ran a 4.44 40. Guess what Chase Brown ran? A 4.43.
Yep.
So there's your speed.
Well, no doubt. There's your speed. And a birdie told me that he's ran sub 4.4 before. So even more speedy than what we have on tap. But speed and production, man, you sign me up. I mean, I think a reason Chase Brown probably does fall is because of all the carries. 676 career carries, over 700 total career touches. But I actually asked Brian Callahan this and running backs coach Justin Hill, because if you're the Bengals, one, it's a 5th round pick. And I didn't come out and say it like that. But like, who cares if he's got tread on his tires? Is he experienced and ready to go? And I think he is. I mean, I think he could contribute right away and be that type of guy where he helps you on passing downs if you need him to, and certainly is a quality runner. He described himself as a patient runner, and 1,600 plus yards, average 5.3 yards per carry for his career, 10 touchdowns last year, another 3 touchdowns through the air. So I like this pick a lot. And you mentioned his athleticism. He's one of the elite athletes in this class, and the fact that you get him here, it's really good value. And they didn't do the double dip at running back, but if they were going to get one on day 3, he's one of those guys. They didn't get your guy Roschon Johnson. Israel Abanikanda, to me, wasn't a get your one guy. I don't think he was versatile enough to do that. He doesn't have 27 career catches, right? And that's exactly what Brown did just last year for Illinois. So I think that part matters too, is the fit and the versatility and the athleticism. It all lined up, and the value. It lined up right here where they were able to take him. They took Charlie Jones, and Abanikanda was off the board about 10 picks later. Brown was still on the board in round 5. And it's a guy that I think they had, and maybe they valued him differently than other teams, but I think they had in that round 4 range. And so the fact that he was there in round 5, they felt really good about it.
Yeah, you like the fact that he's a bell cow at Illinois. As pointed out, he handled 329 carries last year, and he's not going to be asked to do that in Cincinnati. Very likely, he's not going to be asked to be a bell cow in Cincinnati. 20-plus touches in every single game. Great speed. Breakaway speed. Good one cut ability. Can stick his foot in the ground. Change direction. Forced 83 missed tackles, according to Pro Football Focus, in 2023, which was second in this draft class behind only Bijan Robinson. So the elusiveness is there. He's not necessarily the yards after contact guy that Bijan Robinson is, the consistent chewing up huge chunks of yards guy that Bijan Robinson is. He's picked in the 5th round, not the top of the 1st round, obviously. But you get an athlete at the position who has experience as a receiver, who has experience as a pass protector, probably has a little bit of work to do in both of those areas, but at least he has a feel for it. He's not a total stranger to it, which is something that we talked about when we were looking at a lot of the running backs in this class and the partial profiles. Chase Brown is a guy that has a more complete profile than a lot of the other guys picked at this point of the draft or later. More complete, I would say, than Israel Abanikanda, even if you think Israel Abanikanda is a better prospect in terms of the different kinds of things that he did in Illinois' offense. Yeah,
I agree. I totally agree. And you get him nearly a round later, and he was one of the last guys. Like it was getting there where it was like, oh man, where are you going to go? Like who are you going to get running back wise? Because you knew they were taking one, and there was a chance that they could take 2. And so I know that there were a few other guys on the radar, but Brown was certainly a guy that was more than just on the radar, someone that they had targeted going into day 3. And so Jones, Brown, you get both of those. I mean, just think about it, how much that adds to their offense. A Joe Mixon, Chase Brown combo. We don't know about Brown's pass blocking yet. We don't know about any of these rookie running backs pass blocking in the NFL. It's just how it is. But outside of that, I think he's a heck of a compliment. And if you need him to be more, you mentioned it, 329 carries. I think he can handle the load elite athlete, has the weight on him despite being 5'9". I like the pick a lot.
And is not, from all indications, and correct me if I'm wrong here, James, going to be asked to be the lead back. It looks like he's going to come in and be a complimentary back and be part of a complimentary running back room at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we can have the longer discussion about Joe Mixon, but he's here. You know, Zach Taylor said, "I like Joe Mixon," right? And let me pull up the exact quote now. His future is here with the team. I like Joe Mixon. So, by the way, the coaches, this was never a coach thing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Joe Mixon's there, maybe he's not. Zach Taylor isn't the one making the decisions about cap either. But the coaching staff, what Brian Callahan said before the draft, finding someone to complement Mixon. We have this now. Clearly the coaches would like to see Joe Mixon in the backfield next year, or this year rather. I guess it is this year because we're in April. Up next, let's continue the conversation. Let's talk about another weapon. Man, I love that they let me grab a hold of their draft board so we could talk about more athletes, more weapons, and punters because Jake loves punters. But today's show is brought to you by Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious snack, or maybe you're trying to put on a little weight like Charlie Jones might have to at the NFL level, well, you got to get Built Bar. And the beauty of it is it's a protein bar with low calories, low sugar. So if you're him and you need it to get the protein that you want to bulk up and to get a little thick, you can do that. But it's also healthy. Like I said, low calories. So it's going to fit your macros if you're trying to have a delicious snack covered in 100% chocolate and also try to lose weight or get in better shape. Built Bars are perfect for everyone. That's why I call them the number one protein bar on the planet, because they are, and they are going to fit your plan that you're looking for. And you can get them right now easier than ever at your local Walmart, at your local Sam's Club, and also every single flavor, including the specialty flavors at built.com. So make sure you check out Built Bars today, the number one protein bar on the planet, at built.com or Sam's Club and Walmart.
We're going to get to Brad Robbins, the punter who has at times had an elite mustache grade in the facial hair grading system that we've developed here at Locked On Bengals. There's a great picture that Blake Jewell tweeted, and probably others, of elite tier mustache Brad Robbins. We'll get to that later. Let's talk about Andrei Iosvias, the Princeton wide receiver. And you remember when we were doing the mock draft exercise, James, on Thursday or whatever day that was, looking ahead and trying to give a predictive mock draft? I guess that was Wednesday. And I kept saying, well, the Bengals have had contact with this guy, and I'm probably putting too much emphasis on that. I didn't put too much emphasis on it. I just picked the wrong guys they had contact with. I think they actually also met with DJ Turner, but I have to go listen to that interview again to verify that. But Myles Murphy had a top 30, and the coaches were running his drills at his pro day. Jordan Battle, you heard Zach Taylor mention, liked meeting at the combine.
Yeah, I think they met with DJ Turner too. You're right.
We think they met with DJ Turner as well. They had meetings with Chase Brown. That was referenced on the phone call to Chase Brown. We know that there was a coach working out Charlie Jones at his pro day, and they had a top 30 and a virtual visit with Iosivas, who also mentioned the multiple visits with the Bengals. So a lot of guys the Bengals made sure they were familiar with, which is an interesting trend.
Yeah, and real quick on Jordan Battle, Darren Simmons added that that rarely are there guys that you meet at the combine and you're like, I want that guy on my team, like that quick in a 15-minute meeting. And that was one of those guys. So that's kind of that's the impression that Jordan Battle left on the coaching staff, on a guy like Darren Simmons, who's been through thousands of those at this point. I mean, he's been a special teams coordinator for a long, long time. So he's been through a lot of combine interviews. So just wanted to point that out. But yeah, you're right. Andrei Iosvias is another one that was in the building and for multiple days, according to reports. But Troy Walters took him to Roots Chris. And here's what I see. 6'3", 205, 206 pounds, 205 pounds, I believe, right? And 4'3". You know, the explosions there. He runs great in a straight line. I mean, even the agility stuff was good, I thought.
It was all good.
Like you look at it, it's like, okay, I don't care if you went to Princeton or not. And he was getting like third round, fourth round buzz. And I thought in a wide receiver class that doesn't have any super high-end guys, maybe that's the case. And I know they had a much higher grade on him than round 6. So good for them that they were able to double up at receiver, get the plug-and-play guy in Charlie Jones, and then get a guy in Iosivas who didn't run an NFL route tree at Princeton, didn't face press like he's going to in the NFL. He's going to have to adjust to some stuff. But the Bengals are really excited about getting him into the building.
What a freak athlete. I mean, I know I've said this a lot of times, but it really was a trend in this draft class. And he had an extended college career at Princeton because he redshirted, and then they lost their season in the Ivy League with COVID entirely. And so he only played 3 years at the college level, but he comes out at 23 and a half years old. So he's a little bit older. He has a little bit of, well, maybe a good amount of development to do. But right away, one of the best athletes on the team. I mean, Jamar Chase level athleticism in Andrei Iosvias. And I don't say that with embellishment, at least as far as I know. 99.6 percentile athlete according to relative athletic score, with the 4.43 you mentioned, but also a great 10-yard split, 1.5 second 10-yard split on the 40, nearly a 40-inch vertical, 39-inch vertical, great broad jump, really good agility, and doing that at 6'3".
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's pretty good size for those kinds of testing numbers. So while there's some work to do, and that's probably why he was available where he was available, he went to Princeton, smart guy.
Yeah.
You like the possibility of the development here. And what I like about these two wide receiver picks, and I know a lot of people are going to want us to hear about them passing on tight end, is you look around at some of the teams that have really good passing offenses in the league, or really good offenses in general in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And the depth at wide receiver gets tested sometimes. And when you have guys that can step in and can continue to make plays for you because they're really good athletes, look at the kinds of players the 49ers roster, the kinds of players the Chiefs roster in terms of wide receiver depth. The Bengals have the dudes at the top.
Mm-hmm.
But getting some depth, so when you lose one of those guys, you have somebody who can still scare defenses with their traits, with their tools. That's exciting to me, even if there is a little bit of development to do. And talking more so about Iosivas than Jones in that regard, but still exciting.
I looked at the relative athletic score, RAS.football, Kent Lee Platt, or whatever name you called him earlier, that he puts it together. There are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys in this draft class that had a better score out of every position, right? And that's Anthony.
I was just going to say, if you look at wide receivers historically, 14th out of 3,062 wide receivers from 1987 to 2023.
And there was only one. Bryce Ford Wheaton was the only one in this class that had a higher relative athletic score. I'm looking here. Yeah, it was the only one. And so there's a lot to like, because they met with him, the football character, all of those things, and he checks the athleticism boxes. And he was productive at Princeton. It's not like he wasn't. It's not like this guy had caught 7 passes total. So is he an instant contributor? I wouldn't go that far. But he's exactly what you want in round 6, and exactly what you want to give to Troy Walters, an NFLer that played in the NFL, that's gotten so much out of a lot of these guys, and it should be able to do the same with Andrei. Now, how good will he be? I don't know. But he's got the skill set. And the fact that you can get him in round 6, there are some drafts where you take a guy like that in round 4, round 3, and you hope that it pays off. And so I think it offered pretty good value there.
Absolutely a lottery ticket. And he's a little bit older coming into the league, right? But
sure,
has all the tools you would want, in my opinion. He's incredibly athletic, body control's there. And another one where the drop rate is really good. So you get another guy here where the tools are there: hands, athleticism, body control, and you just need to refine it. Sounds good to me. Another consensus win for the Bengals, by the way. Chase Brown was consensus 129, picked at 163. Iosivas was consensus 156, picked at 206, 50 picks later, which makes, out of the first 6 picks in this draft for the Bengals, 5 out of 6 of those consensus wins. Charlie Jones, the only exception there. and that wasn't even a significant reach according to the consensus board. No tight end though, James.
And the thing that is surprising about that is drafting at the end of each round. You would think that, all right, if it's a 5th round guy, you have to take him at the end of round 4. And so that's why they did it with Jones. They didn't think he'd be there the next round. But the fact that they only had to do that once, it's pretty good.
Overall,
pretty good.
Yeah, you praise the process there, right? They stuck to their board. They drafted players where they thought they should be drafted. And as a result, they got good value with these picks, even if some of the positions were at times surprising. And it was surprising that they didn't pick a single tight end. But like last year, this is a scenario we talked about. The tight end class got picked over where the guys that were available to them at each of their picks were not guys that they felt strongly enough to use those picks on.
Yeah, I think looking at it, and I'm just looking at the draft now, I think that in a perfect world, they would have tried to get one of those plug-and-play type tight ends that they would have felt really good about, the Sam Laportas. Well, they had no shot at him. That was not happening. And so then you wait, and you look at round 3. There was no one really there. They were never in on Darnell Washington. Doesn't really fit what they want to do. I know people are mad about it, whatever. And there's the medical issue too, which who knows how they had him graded medically. And then after that, Zach Kuntz fell, right? Everyone was in on him. Josh Wiley, it just didn't line up. I think that's part of it. I think they were open to getting a tight end, but they weren't saying we have to have this position. And I'm okay with that because I don't think they necessarily had to have it, and they still added weapons. They just did it in other areas, and honestly, more important areas to me, which would be wide receiver, and then obviously they needed to add a running back. We knew that. And
obviously Punter, very important.
Punter.
Position.
It is important. I don't blame them. I don't blame them because there were 3 guys. There were clearly 3 guys that were draftable.
Yep.
And I think that the Bengals had 2 well ahead of the 3rd. And that's me speculating a bit, but I think that that's the case. And so when Behringer goes off, right? Or is it Behringer?
I'm not sure which of those.
Bryce Behringer. Either way, the Michigan State punter. When he goes off the board and you have Brad Robbins, I assume he was right behind him. Maybe Robbins was number 1 on their board. Who knows? But you take him. And so they were able to get their guy. And I like him. I mean, he seems to have the direction ability to kick where you need to, and he gets the hang time that Darren Simmons talked about for so long with a guy like Drew Chrisman.
Was tied for the tops, according to PFF, in 2023 in hang time in the college football ranks. Was a knock on Bryce Behringer, who apparently worked it out. We talked to Joe about this. Behringer apparently worked it out at the Senior Bowl and was crushing high hang time punts very, very far at the Senior Bowl. So it wouldn't surprise me if that was the guy they were interested in and they couldn't quite get him at the end of the 6th round. But we called that when they made that trade, right? That was a punter pick. You go back to 2021 for Robbins, 4.3 second hang time average was tied for 2nd in college football. Both of those numbers better than what Drew Chrisman did last year. You use a 6th round pick. I know it's a 6th round pick, and they're going to talk about it being a competition. Brad Robbins, that elite mustache, continuing the tradition of elite hair and facial hair in the Bengals specialist room.
Yep.
Is the favorite to be the Cincinnati Bengals punter in 2023 in the future.
No doubt. I expect them to win the job. It's still going to be a competition, but I think the Bengals got a good one, and it's something they had to address. And so if they felt like they were going to get drafted, and those guys clearly did, all of them got drafted, get one. And they were able to do that by trading down, worked out, and they still got their guy in Jordan Battle. And then in round 7, the defense. See, Lou had to say, all right, so it's 3-3 in one specialist. He said, nah, you ain't taking no 3rd wide receiver. You can't have enough cornerbacks. So they went with DJ Ivey out of Miami. You have many thoughts on this? I think that there's a chance that he could compete for a back end roster spot, practice squad spot, something like that. I think that's kind of what you're looking at with DJ Ivey.
Yeah, not a guy that I know a whole lot about. Looks like most people that had him graded had him in the undrafted free agent range, and
which is fine. Which is fine at pick 246 because that's what you're picking from. You're probably picking a guy that that you want to sign as an undrafted free agent, but you also know that he may have some other suitors. So you're like, let's just get him scooped up now.
And of course, they're getting to work on the undrafted free agent class, and we'll hopefully have some names to talk to you about tomorrow there. I've seen a couple. We're not going to get into those today. When we have a full list, hopefully tomorrow, we might not even have it tomorrow. We'll get into that. But, Moro Ojomo, consensus late 4th rounder, I think, mid 4th rounder, doesn't go until a couple picks later toward the end of the 7th round. That was the name that was the most surprising fall to me as day 3 went on and on. The Bengals don't pull the trigger there. Andre Carter, Ivan Pace, Eli Ricks, Rezjon Wright, Lonnie Phelps, a couple guys like Keaton Mitchell, some guys that we thought they might draft. They don't go with any of those options, so we'll see what happens in undrafted free agency. We know that at the time of this recording, Keaton Mitchell has not signed with the Bengals. He went to the Baltimore Ravens, so it won't be Mitchell, but the Bengals go with Ivey, and we'll learn some more about him. I think, though, looking at this class on the whole, my quick thought is
they added Calvin Tyler, Utah State running back.
Okay, not a guy.
Just because I didn't want people to crush you about running back, so there you go.
Tyler was his last name?
Calvin Tyler, yes.
He is not in our sheet, as far as I know. Regardless of that, my quick closing thoughts, we talked a lot about some themes here, depth throughout this draft, athleticism throughout this draft, character throughout this draft, players the Bengals met with throughout this draft. So those are the big trends that stand out to me, and they don't start dipping into the older part of this draft class until day 3, which I think is also similar to what they did last year. So some trends emerging in the last couple of years here as the Zach Taylor regime settles into putting in their draft classes for the Bengals. And we'll get into some more thoughts about this draft class. On the whole, we'll give it some grades. We'll dive into some of those themes in a broader picture, talk about what some of these picks tell us about the future for the Bengals. Zach Taylor had a very interesting comment about Jonah Williams that we didn't get to in this episode as well. And the Bengals obviously did not draft an offensive tackle. So we'll have to talk about that tomorrow as well, James, as we wrap up day 3 of the 2023 NFL draft. We put it behind us. We look ahead to the future of the Cincinnati Bengals in the next football season, rookie camp, off-season program, all that good stuff coming up in the near future as well. So it's been a fun one, this draft process. We'll talk to you next time as we take a look back and take a look forward at the draft overall and how it fits. Until then, thanks for listening to this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hoo day, and have a good one.